Okay, so do you know what time it is?
Time to play the game!
What's up guys? Today I've got my hands on the OneXFly. Now this is a new Windows gaming handheld powered by the AMD 7840U with the power and performance to run pretty much any of your favorite AAA games on the go. The design itself is quite attractive with customizable RGBs around the joysticks, and we have special RGB letters in the corners, and you can see on this side it says OneXFly, and on the other side, for some strange reason, it says Cream Cake. Now if you buy this for yourself, they will actually give you the opportunity to customize this side with any name you like. Most of the prototypes for reviewers were shipped with the words Cream Cake. Some were actually personalized, but that's what we have here, and you can't change these words yourself. It can only be done by the manufacturer. Now the ergonomics are really nice. You have these prominent rounded grips on the back on both sides, making this one of the most comfortable handhelds from the OneXPlayer brand. So designed for comfortable long gaming sessions and feels really good in the hands. The handheld has a soft touch finish on the back and the front, and the corners and both sides have this shiny black finish. The actual controls are also very good quality. We have Hall effect joysticks with RGB lights, decent quality D-pad so you can pull off your favorite moves, Hadoukens, etc. You have a familiar Xbox layout with the X, Y, BA buttons. Select and start at the top. Over here you have your home button, and on this side we've got two more buttons. One is a turbo button and the other one is your on-screen keyboard button. Now up on top you have your shoulder buttons and your Hall effect triggers. Triggers feel good with decent amount of travel, and I do enjoy playing a bit of Call of Duty multiplayer, and I feel the triggers are more than adequate for me to enjoy my multiplayer sessions. There are also two programmable macro buttons next to the shoulder buttons, so one on each side. In this prototype model, I can't actually program these to do anything, but when you pick up the retail version, you'll get the 120Hz display and you'll get the software so you can customize those buttons. Now another great positive for me is the connectivity. You're getting a full-size USB 3 port. We've got a USB 4 Type-C port for fast charging and supports display out, of course. We've got a 3.5mm headphone jack, volume rocker, and a power button. Not only that, on the other side we've got another Type-C USB 4 port, and we have MicroSD expansion supporting up to 4TB cards. Now let's talk about the display. We have a 7-inch IPS fully laminated display. That's Full HD 1920 by 1080, 120Hz refresh, and 100% sRGB color space. This is a prototype and it's only 60Hz refresh. That is not what you're going to get. You're going to get the 120Hz refresh with 450 nits of peak brightness. It is a touchscreen and it is very responsive too. Now let's talk about the performance. The OneXFly is powered by the AMD Ryzen 7840U with 8 cores, 16 threads, and it's a 4nm APU clocked at 3.3 GHz base and a 5.1 GHz turbo. You have integrated AMD 780M graphics with 16 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM running at 7500 MHz and a choice between 1632 and 64 gig storage. There is also a microSD card slot, and I did test a 1TB card and that works fine. Now in case you're wondering, you do get Windows 11 Home pre-installed and ready to go. So I must say, overall build quality is great. I'm really happy with how this feels in my hands. I really like how compact and light this is, coming in at only 580 grams. It's noticeably smaller, lighter and thinner than the Steam Deck and the Asus ROG Ally. So just want to quickly compare the dimensions. OneXFly is 26.3 centimeters in width, 9.8 in height, and it's 2.26 centimeters in thickness. And the ROG Ally is 28 centimeters by 13.3 centimeters and 3.9 centimeters in thickness. And the biggest of the bunch, Steam Deck, 29.8 centimeters by 11.7 centimeters, and it's a whopping 4.9 centimeters thick at its thickest point. So Team OneXFly has done a very good job with the design and ergonomics. Just look at the screen of the OneXFly. The bezel is so tiny. We're talking about 5mm bezel at the top and at the bottom. Now if we compare that to the ROG, you can see a considerable bezel considerable bezel. So quite amazed to how thin they got the top and bottom bezel for the OneXFly. Being a compact console, thank you guys, if you just step aside, it's not your show. Okay, so do you know what time it is?
Time to play the game!
That's right, H. It's time to play some games. So let's put this thing to the test. And for each game, I'll show you the best settings to enjoy the game at a decent TDP. Then I'll show the same game being tested at maximum TDP, and I'll also bump the graphics up to max with the aim to push the chipset and show you guys what it can handle.
Oh, can I climb those rocks? Of course. Just don't fall. I never fall. Yes, sure. King Hugo patrols the ramparts of his great wall.
What can you see from up there?
My kingdom.
Is it prosperous?
It was. Whoa, that castle is huge.
What do you say? Do we attack it?
All right, I'm ready.
Now, charge!
Charge!
So this is 1080p, lowest graphics, 30 watt TDP. And we're achieving around 60 frames per second. So this is 720p low graphics and TDP still at 30 watts. And we're achieving a similar FPS. So this is 720p lowest graphics and the TDP is at 20 watts. We're achieving around 40 frames per second. Not very stable.
How can they create something? And a goal to seal the hat-trick! A masterclass at finishing! Just can't stop him today!
And rendering quality, I want to go to high just to see what happens.
Behind for him to chase. What a big chance that was. Keeper has the ball.
So 720p, lowest graphics, still 30 watt TDP. Let's see what happens.
Was required. United have it once again.
100 frames per second, people. Okay, so next game, GTA 5, 1080p resolution. I've set the graphics to very high and the TDP is at 30 watts. Let's drop it down to 10 watts. So 10 watts TDP, and now you can see the frame rate has dropped down to 20 frames per second. Still at 1080p. Still playable. But I just wanted to push this one. 10 watt TDP, we're getting 20 frames per second. So still at 1080p resolution, graphics set to medium. And we're achieving 34 frames per second based on 10 watt TDP. That's actually quite impressive, guys. So I want to drop it down to the lowest 4 watt TDP. I don't even think this is possible. Let's see. So I've set it to 4 watt TDP, but it's actually on 7 watts, as you can see. We're playing at around 20 frames per second. I can't believe this game is playing pretty well, full HD, with only 7 watt TDP. That is quite incredible. And I'm setting the graphics to its highest. Dropping the TDP down to 20 watts will give you 37 frames per second on medium graphics.
Strange beasts cross our hero's path. Hard to tell if they're bloodthirsty.
Okay, TDP is now set to 10 watts, and we're getting 15 frames per second. So at 10 watts, the game is a little bit choppy.
Lara climbs out over a lake of bubbling lava.
So at 15 watt TDP, we're achieving around 29 frames per second, which is quite reasonable with medium graphics. Okay, 720p medium graphics, and the TDP is at 14 watts. And you can see we're achieving just over 40 frames per second.
It's taller than she thought.
We're playing Shadow the Tomb Raider, 720p medium graphics. I got the TDP set to only 10 watts, and we're achieving a pretty solid 30 frames per second.
These parapets are damaged. She'll have to squeeze through. She's so close.
And you've seen how high we can go. Now we're going to see how low we can go. So lowest graphics, 720p resolution, and I want to take that TDP down right to the minimum. So 4 watts TDP. Realistically, you can see it's actually 7 watt TDP minimum, and we're playing at 30 frames per second. Average is about 25 frames per second. That is really playable. The lowest TDP setting, 720p resolution, lowest graphics, and the game still looks good and plays pretty well. Alright, next game, WWE 2K23. We're playing at 1080p resolution. I got the graphics maxed out to very high / ultra, and we're playing at 30 watts TDP. Everything maxed out. Let's see if this can handle it. So you can see it's very laggy. This game is so graphically intense. So I didn't actually expect it to run on ultra.
Superstars you're ever going to meet. Grappling, strikes, he can do it all. The guy's a legit.
So on medium graphics, the game is a little bit more playable, but it's still not stable. The game is struggling to play at this resolution. So we're going to have to drop it down to 720p. 720p resolution. Now thanks to the screen size, 720p resolution, very high ultra graphics, looks quite impressive to be honest. We're achieving 60 frames per second with the TDP maxed out to 30 watts. Beautiful, 15 watts. We're getting around 59 frames per second, 720p graphics maxed out. That is quite impressive. Full HD resolution, graphics are set to ultra. We've got the TDP set to 30 watts, and we're achieving just over 40 frames per second. The game is more than playable, maxed out.
Someone used a jab here to establish a box.
Now I'm going to drop that TDP down to 20 watts and see what happens. So dropping down to 20 watts, the frame rate has also dropped down to around 35 frames per second.
For you to move first, and then we'll strike like a snake. Keep an eye on.
What happens if we drop the resolution down to 720p, keeping it on ultra still and leaving it on 10 watts? Now this game does need more power than that, so let's bring it to 15 watts. So 720p, still on ultra settings, and 15 watt TDP.
Counterfire relies a lot on their instincts and reaction time. You've got to get in there quick to punch your opponent before he gets his fist back to block.
Reaction is second to none.
Now you can see the temperatures throughout my tests. I've been playing a lot of games on this. I record footage, I pause footage, and I carry on playing. You can see the temperatures are fine, but it's doing its job. It's staying cool. It doesn't feel excessively hot to the touch. So overall, I am very impressed with this console, the gaming abilities. I like the potential battery saving options you have. You can compromise with the quality. You can take it down to low graphics or even lower resolution and achieve a longer battery life by taking the TDP down. Or if you got it plugged in like I have, you can max everything out, 1080p, 30 watt TDP, and still achieve 43 frames per second. So yeah, this is one of the nicest experiences I've had on a PC gaming handheld. So this is The Witcher, 1080p resolution, graphics set to ultra, 30 watt TDP, and we're achieving around 35 to 40 frames per second. Pretty decent if you ask me. Not bad at all. Okay, let's go back to graphics and we're going to drop it to the lowest graphical setting. We're still at 1080p resolution and TDP is still at 30 watts. You can see the frame rate has just jumped up to 51 frames per second. The game still looks stunning thanks to the screen size. Looks impressive. Now when you press the turbo button, it brings up the OneX console overlay, which is very useful. It lets you customize things on the fly. So you can tweak the TDP from 4 watts all the way up to 30 watts as required. The fan speed can also be adjusted to your personal preference, or it can be left on automatic so it can adjust itself as required. However, there is no real option to switch off the fan completely. Now vibration intensity can be adjusted or even switched off. You can also immediately switch resolutions, which comes in useful when you want to switch between 720p and 1080p for certain games. You can also adjust the RGBs, and there are many presets to choose from. And you can even choose solid colors if you prefer to do so. Now me personally, I really like the OXP Classic with the orange, and another favorite of mine is the Cyberpunk colors. That looks really cool too. Now here's a cool tip for you guys. If you wanted to change the RGBs without even going into the overlay, you just press the home button and the volume down button at the same time. And every time you press it, it will actually cycle between the presets, as you can see. So this shortcut is quite handy. If you're in the middle of a game and you don't want to bring up the overlay, you can just press this combination and immediately change the RGB colors. You can also switch off the RGB lights by keeping the same combination press. So keep home and volume down press and the RGBs turn off. There is another way to switch off the RGBs. Open the overlay, make a selection, any color you like, and then press the Y button. That will immediately switch off the lights, or you can press Y to bring it back on. And over here at the bottom you have a slider for brightness and volume control. And over here you can see an icon of a memory. If you tap on it, it will immediately free up some memory for you, so quite handy. If you keep the keyboard button pressed, so if you long press the keyboard button, a light will turn on and the left joystick will turn into a cursor, and the B button is right click and the A button is left click. So that's mouse mode for you. If you keep it pressed again, that will switch off mouse mode, the light will turn off, and then you can see the cursor's not doing anything. Now there is a shortcut for Control Alt Delete. If you press the home button and the keyboard button at the same time, press it like that, Control Alt Delete works. From there you can do your usual stuff. And at any point, if you want to bring up the game library, just keep the turbo button pressed, so long press it, and the game library will immediately appear with all your currently installed games all on one page, so you can launch the games conveniently. But not only launch, you've actually got options. So if you hit the start button, you can see some of those options: play, add to collection, hide the game, remove from list, or delete the game. So you do have some management options for the game. It's not just a library of games that you can play. You can actually remove uninstalled stuff as well. So that is quite useful too. And as you scroll through the games, you can see the artwork on the back and the covers as well. All of that gets detected automatically. You don't have to download any covers or anything like that. It's all done for you. When you install a new game, you want it to appear here. Just press Y for search and press A to select search, and it will immediately start scanning your hard drive, your Steam library, and any other location. It will detect your games and it will automatically download the covers and the backgrounds, etc. So yeah, really liking the interface, definitely useful to work with. And since I've been testing this unit, I've already had 1 or 2 updates for the software, so you can expect it to be well supported. With compact and portability comes concerns for potential overheating issues. So you do wonder, with everything crammed so tightly together, what is the heat dissipation like? This is one of the smallest 7-inch handhelds you can currently buy, but to my surprise, heat dissipation is very good. And the large fan intake on the back we have does a very good job at keeping the system running cool. I do leave it on auto, so when the system's being pushed, you hear that fan quite loud, but it does the job. The system has stayed at safe levels. I've never had an overheating issue with this thing so far. So there you have it, guys. That concludes my OneXFly review. There are many things to like about this Windows handheld. The compact size is appreciated with tiny bezels, lightweight and easy to travel with, beautiful display, love the extra USB ports including the 2 USB 4 ports, and this does also support display out via Type-C. Furthermore, this does support up to 4TB microSD card, which will certainly be useful. And inside the box, you can expect a 65W fast charger, which is great. But the OneXFly also supports up to 100W fast charging, which means 50% charge in just 30 minutes. Battery life is as expected in these Windows handhelds. You can achieve just over 2 hours when playing at 15W TDP and around 1 hour when playing at 30W. So definitely a good idea to pick up that 100W charger. Now I did try to show you multiple settings for popular games. If you can play your favorite game at the lowest TDP possible, then you can enjoy a long battery life. I'm happy to report that there were no overheating issues, no crashes or instabilities. Everything worked as it should. Now this is a prototype model, but it was a damn good prototype. Now I'm wondering what the retail version would be like, considering I like this one so much. This plays nearly all the big games at 1080p, medium to low graphics, or 720p games can actually be played at the highest graphical settings. Now, for example, one of my favorite games of this year, FIFA 23, was playable at 1080p, high graphics, and achieving over 70 FPS. Now, the One X console software UI is very useful, and it's being constantly improved with software updates. Now, one thing I actually forgot to mention is the sound quality. All I can say is, wow. Sound quality is super impressive, probably the best sound produced on a Windows handheld console that I've ever tested. They are down-firing speakers, but they pack a pretty powerful punch. So I think I've covered all bases in this video. If not, then do let me know in the comments and I'm happy to respond to your questions. That concludes this video and I hope you found it useful. I do appreciate if you could hit the like and sub button. Meanwhile, thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.